So there's a wild Sri Lankan elephant on the far bank of this coast. We'll see how close we get.
And that means we're marking off number 2 for our big 5, right? It looks like a rock star.
A recent trend has emerged of identifying and naming leopards in those protected areas.
All the males look like they've been through some serious combat.
He's picking up large clumps of grass. He rolls them in his trunk and then he kicks them against his foot.
That's exactly what he's doing.
And effectively what that does is remove dust, ticks, mites, and other annoying insects from the clump of grass.
Wow, look at him. He's really doing the grass thing. Why can't a leopard or a bear come attack us right now while we're eating?
They could. He shares the genes of both the domestic and the true wild.
I'm so off-put by this animal.
And yet it's the most undervalued of our terrestrial big 5.
Dude, look at that. Okay, I'm sorry, but he's got a massive cock. If this doesn't convince you that safari is the way to do this, I don't know what to do. Hey, so before this episode pops off, I just want to mention a huge thanks to tuktukrental.com for sponsoring our entire series here in Sri Lanka. The people behind tuktukrental.com are the reason why we were able to travel the entire country and bring you the incredible stories we have been able to during this series. Tuktukrental.com is your one-stop shop for booking and planning your entire trip around Sri Lanka, and then obviously renting an incredible tuk-tuk and traveling around this incredible nation. Sri Lanka is such a fun place to travel to, but it's even more fun when you're able to travel with your own tuk-tuk. So definitely check out tuktukrental.com in the description below. That? That's an elephant. You're taking more and more creative liberties on every intro, and I don't know how I feel about it. Hey guys, comment down below if we need to restrict Moshe's behavior.
Or if I should just take over the channel completely.
There you go.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We have a very special guest here, and I can't wait for you to meet them. Here he is.
What's up, name's Sanjay Pasindu. Guys, welcome back to Sri Lanka. Today we're producing a video that I've wanted to make for years, and it's with one of my closest friends from this country, a good friend, an ally of the natural world and biological wonders. This is my good friend John Wilson.
Hi everyone.
Safari guide extraordinaire. And you have your own safari guide trekking company.
Well, yes. So for the most part, I'm freelance. I do freelance in terms of any official safari type for a lot of different companies, resorts, hotels, whatnot. But I also have my own independent work that I do as well.
And he's a dear, good friend. And we worked a lot together on my series here in Sri Lanka in 2019. He guided me throughout pretty much the whole country. And we've wanted to make this video for a long time, not only to do safari together, but also to explore conservation in Sri Lanka, because you're on the forefront of conservation in this amazing country. So maybe you can tell us where we actually are right now.
So we've just entered the Kumana National Wildlife Sanctuary, as you can see from the signboard here, which was erected by the Department of Wildlife Conservation. The Department of Wildlife Conservation is one of 2 preliminary, or should we say main, national government entities in charge of biodiversity conservation and protected area management. The Kumana National Wildlife Sanctuary is the first protected area that you actually drive through on the way to the far more well-known Kumana National Park, which is our ultimate destination today.
So yeah, today we're going to be doing safari through Kumana, looking for Sri Lanka's big 5.
Yes, as well as a whole host of other biodiversity as well. Avian fauna, mammals, reptiles, maybe a few amphibians and nice insects as well, depending on how time goes.
And so throughout this video, we'll be talking about, conservation in Sri Lanka and how we, especially people who are tourists or foreigners traveling to this country, can be on the forefront as well into helping conserve these animals and the right and wrong ways to do wildlife ecotourism in this country. So let's begin. Our wonderful safari driver for the day.
Yes.
What's your name, sir?
Asanka.
Asanka.
Yes.
My name is Pasindu.
Recently.
It's not actually Pasindu, but we'll go for it for this video.
So Asanka is actually one of my well-used safari drivers, and he works for our friend Priyanta. And I use him on regular occasion when we go to Kumana National.
And what is the vehicle that we're using today for safari?
We're actually using a customized Toyota Hilux with a safari concept on the back. As you can see, they only use single cabs to actually create the safari concept, because if you had a double cab, it simply would not be feasible. Now, obviously, these are not technically road legal, but inside any publicly accessible protected area that does vehicular safaris, these are the type of vehicles you want to take up.
And this you were saying this is the creme de la creme of safari vehicle.
More or less, yeah.
Yeah.
There are other different types, but now, for example, maxi boleros can be a little bit loud. So usually, if you want a good quality safari vehicle, you go for a Toyota Hilux or a Mitsubishi L200.
Amazing. The Toyota Hilux is a vehicle that it's so popular in Asia. It is one, I think, throughout Australia as well. One of the most popular sort of pickup trucks that exists. Ignore this one. So here's the.
Open to just hating on me.
This is the inside. This is not the cockpit, but the cock block. And then, yeah, let's hit it up. Yeah, look at them guys. They're just sitting there.
You see them, yeah?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Have a look, then I will explain.
Whoa! Dude, homeboy's got an insane day.
That's a hornbill, no?
Yeah.
But I can see him here.
Also, they're monogamous, which means unless something drastic happens to either sex, they mate for life.
Wow, this is one of my favorite birds. I love hornbills.
Left-hand side, you'll see a male with very small antlers. So he's a buck.
What spooked him right now? Us?
No, our presence. They suddenly got up just to be sure that they didn't have to run away on command.
So these guys, they'll be food for leopards?
So here's a little bit of irony. The Sri Lankan spotted deer is the favorite prey item of the Sri Lankan leopard.
Wow. What about the bear? Do they hunt them?
No, so Sri Lankan sloth bears, generally speaking, do not hunt, but they are omnivorous. So they will eat meat.
If there's a carcass.
If there's a carcass.
Off they go.
Don't worry. Being the most numerous species of deer in Sri Lanka and being found in such large numbers in the dry zone, we'll see so many more of them before the day is up. 3 species of hawk eagle found in Sri Lanka. So you have the crested or changeable hawk eagle, you have the legs hawk eagle, which is extremely rare, Legges, and then you have one of my favorite hawk eagles, the mountain hawk eagle, found in the central highlands and in the eastern sector of the Singaraja Forest Reserve.
Is this little dude still weaning off of parents? He's waiting for parents to come back?
He's out on his own, but he still has a long way to go before he becomes a fully fledged mature adult.
What a beautiful eagle. My God. You see him, Mosh?
Of course. Shall I delete this? So one of the reasons he's called the changeable hawk eagle, see the crest on his head?
Yeah.
He can move it up and down like this.
And
Hence the changeable hawk eagle. So that's mostly for showing off to rival males, attracting the attention of females. It's multi-purpose.
Kingfisher, right? Not bee eater.
So the white-throated kingfisher is alternatively named the white-breasted kingfisher. If that kingfisher turns around, you'll see why he's called the white-breasted kingfisher, or white-throated.
Oh, I see. I caught it on camera. His white throat right there.
So the white-throated kingfisher is an interesting species of kingfisher. Spotted or ash dove. In the middle you have a little green bee-eater, and to the left what just flew off is a common myna bird.
Wow, that bee eater is crazy cool.
So the little green bee-eater is one of 4 species of bee-eater found on this island. It's a common resident, and in terms of overall size, it's the smallest of the 4 species. Although they do specialize in the hunting and consumption of bees, always remember that in the wild, in biodiversity, evolution and the ability to consume anything is the key to survival. So if you're a specialist, a lot of the times you can die out from different ecological conditions. So having said that, bee eaters will also eat other species of insects as well, along with wild bees. Yeah. So in a lot of protected areas in the dry zone, artificial water holes are built by the Department of Wildlife Conservation at a time when there's limited amounts of water, so that these artificial water holes can be continuously filled up to give biodiversity a chance during the sheer scorching temperatures that occur in the dry zone's dry season, or during the dry zone's dry season.
There it is.
That's the first proper member of the Big Five.
We did it, man. We spotted number 1.
Although you'll see a lot more by end of day, I can assure you.
Is that plastic?
Do you remember, I think when you first came to Sri Lanka, we talked about the Padayatra, the ancient foot pilgrimage through the southeast?
Yeah.
So the Padayatra was literally 2 weeks ago. So unfortunately, the Department of Wildlife Conservation and the rest of the government have not got around to cleaning up the after effects of the Padayatra. This time, I think 25,000 people participated.
So that's the effects of that pilgrimage.
These are the negative effects of the Padayatra.
Wow, it's a lot of plastic. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to focus on that, but I just couldn't ignore it.
You'll see that unfortunately as we go throughout the main trail. So luckily, the Padayatra follows a very specific set of vehicular safari trails. So the interior of Kumana remains untouched by the Padayatra, but the main trail you'll see right along the way plastic and other trash. And the rest of them are all black-headed ibis.
He looks like a rock star amongst them.
He does. He's got like a slick back hair, man.
It's literally Axl Rose of the birds.
In front of us, for ceremonial purposes, that effectively marks the boundary point between the Panama Kudimbigla Wildlife Sanctuary and Kumana National Park.
Now we've started this adventure outside of Arugam Bay, which is like one of the most famous tourist spots in Sri Lanka at the moment. And this isn't Yala National Park, correct?
This is Kumana National Park.
Kumana National Park. What's the big difference between this place?
Keep an eye on your left, that's part of the Okanda Temple complex right there. Sitting on the boundary line between Panama Kudimbigla and Kumana.
Okay, Kumana National Park.
Asanka පිටිපස්සේ දොරවල් ඉන්න. අයිඩිලා ටිකක් හදන්න. අපි කඩලා වීඩියෝ එක හදලා යන්න. So we can get down here at the main entrance.
Okay.
Maybe make a video. I also brought a little something to make.
Maybe John, you can explain for the people who are unaffiliated with this stuff. How do you?
Shall we head over there?
Yeah. When you do safari in Sri Lanka, you have to get out of the safari truck before you begin?
Well, no, here's the thing. So you at any entrance, hold on.
Sure.
Let's film it over there.
Okay. John is the man with the plan.
Yeah, so you had questions.
Yeah, so when you're in Sri Lanka, before you begin safari, if I remember correctly, it's been a while since I've done this, but you have to stop usually before you enter the park.
So the thing is, any publicly accessible protected area, what you do is you come to the respective entrance. It's either the main entrance or one of the other entrances, depending on the protected area, because each protected area has a unique number of official entrances. You get down, you pay your official entrance fees, and then if you're doing a vehicular safari, an official vehicular safari, you get back in your vehicle. Or if you're doing any other kind of safari, you either do it on foot in terms of walking and or hiking safaris, or you do it in boats in terms of riverine, reservoir and maritime safaris. And then if you're in specific marine protected areas like marine national parks, marine nature reserves and marine wildlife sanctuaries, then you do official snorkeling and diving safaris.
Amazing.
Very short, in a very short sense, that's how it works.
And now we've got a map of Kumana.
Of Kumana National Park. So as you can see here, Kumana National Park is quite a big protected area, 357 square kilometers. We will only be exploring, I mean, truth be told, we'll be exploring barely any of it, but we'll cover as much as we can today, given that we have a good 6 hours inside. As you can see here, we started at the main entrance of the Panama Kudimbigla Wildlife Sanctuary. We drove through the entire wildlife sanctuary, past the initial 4 lagoons, so Pannakala, Solambe, Kunukala, and Halava. And now we have reached the main entrance of Kumana National Park, and from that point we carry on down either the main trail, passing the balance 4 coastal lagoons on this stretch here, right up to Kumana Villu, which I will explain about in more detail, or we take the inland vehicular safari trails and then we double back via the Kumana Reservoir back to Kumana Villu and vice versa. So we'll see based on how today goes.
And what kind of animals can we expect to see in this on the safari in this park?
So obviously Kumana in terms of terrestrial Big Five is quite a smorgasbord. You have wild elephants, true wild water buffalo, Sri Lankan sloth bear, Sri Lankan leopard, 2 species of crocodile, so the Sri Lankan mugger or freshwater crocodile, and the Sri Lankan marsh or estuarine crocodile, which is slightly rarer but much bigger. So loosely speaking, that would constitute Sri Lanka's terrestrial big 5. And then there's a whole host of mammalian, avian, reptilian, amphibian, and insect-related biodiversity as well. So there's a lot to see.
And just passing through here in Kudambigala, Panama, we've seen the langurs, the gray langurs. We've seen some feral water buffalo.
Yeah, so those we wouldn't include in biodiversity because those would be considered livestock. But the biodiversity we did see, we saw 4 lesser adjutant storks, we saw 2 woolly neck storks, we saw 1 Sri Lankan spotted deer, and that was about it.
And the hornbill.
And of course the Malabar pine
Amazing.
hornbill and the tufted grey langur as well.
So, you know, doing this with John, I feel like we're going to get a perspective of wildlife that you can't get really with any tour guide or with any safari guide that you just go. And this is the point of what I wanted to show you guys today is doing safari. It's not just going on safari, paying whatever fees you want to go on and like sitting in the truck and seeing an elephant. It's really paying attention, like hyper focused on all the detail of all the biodiversity that exists in there and giving appreciation to every animal, whether it's a lizard, an ant, or an elephant. And John is the right person to sort of, I hope, inspire people watching this video to sort of take safari like this. And obviously you can hire him himself. I'll leave information down below in the description. So shall we hit the park? Shall we get in there?
Yes, let's do it.
Oh, I see there's also sea turtle nesting across the whole...
Yes, so all
area.
5 species of sea turtle that are found in Sri Lanka nest along the entire stretch of these 2 protected areas. Because don't forget, both the Panama Kudimbigala Wildlife Sanctuary and Kumana National Park are unique in Sri Lankan context because they're amongst a select number of protected areas on this island that have entire administrative boundaries, which is made up of the Sri Lankan coastline.
So in here, all this is without roads. This is all pure wild.
That's more or less untouched. I mean,
But
honestly,
there's these rock caves, like temples here.
So these are from a long bygone era, and it's very difficult to say how much of these old ruins and architectural structures are left. But yes, for the most part, the bulk of Kumana National Park is more or less inaccessible, unless you have a special permit with the Department of Wildlife Conservation to actually go, and then you need heavy equipment to go inside and actually explore any old ancient trails and convert them into vehicular safari trails.
Wow. I'm excited for this. So this is how many individual leopards are identified currently in this park.
For now, the list is being continually updated, but for the moment, this is what the boards represent. There's a board on that side as well. For males.
Wow, so they're naming them.
Yeah, it's part of this. In certain protected areas that are publicly accessible and popular, a recent trend has emerged of identifying and naming leopards in those protected areas.
Wow, man, they're so... Wow, this guy looks mangled. This guy is mangled. Damn, he's missing an eye. This guy's just...
Homeboy is looking at you with death right there.
He's been through some shit. All the males look like they've been through some serious combat.
Yeah.
What a crazy, scary animal. Oh. All right, let's hope we see some leopards.
This now in Yala, it's already been done. So the plan is hopefully in the future to renovate this building and turn it into a fully fledged leopard center for Kumana National Park.
Leopard Center for research about leopards?
Research, scientific research, development, processing, all the areas related to the conservation of the leopard in Sri Lanka.
All right, man. Well, fingers crossed that we see a leopard today.
Fingers crossed.
It's one of the more elusive ones.
Obviously, no guarantees of anything in the wild, but nonetheless, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, baby. Let's see what we can find up in here. Up in here!
In the water?
Yeah, so those are hybrid buffalo. That's what happens when domestic water buffalo meet true wild water buffalo and hybridization, genetic hybridization happens.
And so they just chill in the water?
Yes, because generally speaking, domestic water buffalo are rather lazy, and as their name suggests, they do like to spend a lot of their time in semi-aquatic/aquatic environments. So yeah.
Let me ask you a question. We're just entering the park right now. We're beginning the safari. What's the etiquette / protocol when you're on safari? Is it okay to be loud? Should you be quiet? Should you be...
So it's always best to maintain as much quiet as possible. Remember that habituation predominantly occurs in a vehicle safari capacity to the vehicle itself. So the biodiversity might be alarmed or scared or nervous of high voices and loud voices. So always keep calm, stay in the vehicle at all times unless at an official designated stopping point, and maintain relative quiet.
And what about smells?
We can talk like this, but we don't shout necessarily. And in terms of smells, unless you absolutely must, try and avoid wearing deodorants and other unnecessary odors that would give away or give off a scent that is not considered natural.
So all three of us are in our bodysuits right now. No smells, just a little bit of clothes on. But we're planning to take those off later throughout the safari. Okay,
You can get close from that side.
so what have we spotted now?
So there is a wild Sri Lankan elephant on the far bank of this coastal lagoon. We'll see how close we can get.
And that means we're marking off number 2 for our big 5, right? All right.
Are there 5?
Yeah, there was like 7. Wait, is it me or did that elephant look pretty big?
Yes.
That looks like a big elephant.
That looks like a big bull. It's difficult to say from such a distance, but let's go closer and see.
Exciting.
Did a little bund across this part of the lagoon, and obviously because it's broken, we can't do the entire thing. That's why we have to come all the way around. And if you look to your left, you will see our wild elephant right there.
There he is. He's doing a little dance on his own over there.
That's not actually a dance. I'll explain that in a minute.
Look at him.
What he's actually doing is a behavior that is very unique to the Sri Lankan elephant. So effectively, he's picking up large clumps of grass, natural grasses, and he rolls them in his trunk and then he kicks them against his foot.
That's exactly what he's doing.
And effectively what that does is remove dust, ticks, mites, and other annoying insects from the clump of grass, cleaning it for all intents and purposes. Then he'll swing his trunk back or swing it down, eat the grass, and start the whole process over again. And it's a very unique behavior. They do a similar type of behavior, but with a slightly more specialized component in the water, where they actually pick up clumps of vegetation and they whack them against the water from side to side to clean the vegetation of any unnecessary irritants, and then they eat it. And the Sri Lankan elephant, Elephas maximus, as a subspecies of the Asian elephant, is one of the few subspecies of the Asian elephant in the world, and amongst even the African elephants, to exhibit this type of behavior.
This little guy. He's not as big as I thought he was coming up close, right?
So this is actually a young bull.
His tail is long.
That's how an elephant's tail should be, not chopped off like you find in a lot of wild elephants. So this is actually a very young bull. He's about 15 to 20 years of age, give or take. So which means he would have only left his family or been kicked out of his family 3-4 years ago maximum.
Is that the reason he's on his own?
So wild elephant society is extremely matriarchal. So all males either leave or get kicked out of their herd, and the primary purpose for this mite is actually very smart, is to avoid inbreeding with their relatives. So it's actually genetics and into their brains, and because of that, hybrids, those are also hybrid.
Do you think he's interested in us right now? He can see us, right?
He knows we're here. He's not interested in us.
He's not interested at all. Wow, look at him. He's really doing the grass thing. Is there a name for that behavior?
We only recently established the context of the behavior about 2-3 years ago. That's how wild elephants' tails should be. So here is an excellent example of a young hybrid water buffalo. So as you can see, based on his horn structure, shape, size, body mass, weight, he shares the genes of both the domestic and the true wild. Now there are positives and negatives to that. A lot of limited research that has been done suggests that the positives are that at the very least these hybrids still carry part of the true wild gene, but on the negative it means that the genetic stock of the true wild water buffalo in Sri Lanka is in peril. So there are multiple arguments back and forth for that.
Nonetheless, it's a beautiful bovine.
It's an absolutely beautiful bovine, that is true.
All right, so we've exited the safari truck in the middle of the national park now.
At an official designated stopping point, mind you.
Important to clarify, we're not just doing this rambunctiously. But we're here to eat some lunch. We've got a local lunch. I'm going to show you guys a little bit about what it looks like when you're doing safari, what kind of food you're eating. John is the one who organized all this too, but you can see a beautiful view here of the oceans of the east coast of Sri Lanka.
This sir is for you.
What do we got here, John? What is this?
So we have a very simple rice and curry. We have dal, full sambal, chicken and rice. Very simple and very easy to eat when on a wilderness adventure.
So is this a common thing that you will get when you're on safari?
Depends. Depends on what different tastes and different interests are in terms of food. But more or less, yeah, this is a very simple, easy meal to take into the wild.
I'll show you guys what we got here. Like John said, we've got the rice and curry meal. We just got it at a local rice and curry shop. We got some chicken.
That the rice doesn't fall down.
And it's still actually warm. Surprisingly, we got it hours ago. Rice, sambal, some dal. Fantastic.
This
Wow.
good size for you.
Thank you. So mostly when you have customers, you'll hit up like a rice and curry place to get a
No,
simple lunch.
sometimes if I'm freelancing somewhere, then obviously the place that we are freelancing for will provide some sort of food.
Some sort of packed lunch.
But if it's an independent thing that I'm taking myself, then yeah. Awesome. Make a bit more.
Moshe's got the veggie option. There's some dal, sambal, hard-boiled eggs.
Yes. Yeah.
Healthy, nutritious, and delicious.
Yes, very much so. How is it?
Fantastic.
Yeah.
John, I'm going to ask you a question while we're eating. Why can't a leopard or a bear come attack us right now while we're eating?
They could.
They could.
But it's unlikely that they would. Anyway, speaking, Sri Lankan leopards generally avoid confrontation with people, all things considered. We have one of the lowest rates of human-leopard conflict, at least human-leopard conflict in the sense of leopards actually attacking people. In terms of leopards dying on a regular basis, we are definitely amongst the highest out there. But in terms of actually attacking people, it's very low in Sri Lanka. Sloth bear is a completely different story, but it's very unlikely given the time of day and given the fact that there's 4 people and 1 big safari vehicle here that we would be put through that kind of encounter.
But for all intents and purposes, we are in the middle of the national park still.
Yes, very much.
Anything could happen.
That's why we're at an official designated stopping point.
All right, so we finished eating. We've begun safari again. We're currently standing next to a hawk or a falcon. We're not sure.
It's a crested serpent eagle.
Oh, a serpent
Serpent
eagle.
eagle.
I know serpent eagles very well. That was really exciting the way that scene just opened up. We had stopped and John was explaining to us about the avian fauna, the ibises and the egrets, and then all of a sudden you see it jump in the water and the mugger crocodile moves off. So amazing. That's super cool, man. It's amazing too being like one of the only people in this park right now, it feels like. So you've got a lot of quiet, a lot of time to yourself to just observe and just look at the scene sort of develop.
And the thing is, even though the tourism trade has meant that Kumana's visitation levels have increased significantly over recent times, there's so much of Kumana to explore that even if there were a relatively large number of vehicles, we could still get lost in Kumana and avoid vehicles for hours on end. That is one of the beauties, in my personal opinion, about Kumana National Park.
This is one of your favorite parks, right?
So this is one of the ones that I hold closest to me for personal reasons. Kumana National Park alongside Basgamo National Park in the north central part of the island.
Amazing. That was so awesome. No lepi. So maybe as we're rushing over to this elephant now, we can explain. I want you to do the explanation about habituation by animals and why this elephant won't necessarily run away from us.
So the thing about biodiversity habituation is it comes in several different forms. Obviously, on the negative side, if you start feeding, interacting, trying to touch examples of biodiversity, then it can have very negative outcomes. But on the other side of things, what's slightly more positive is that In a protected area like Kumana National Park, where a big or a medium-sized bull elephant or tusker has not seen so many vehicles, they will most likely tolerate the presence of vehicles, and the more vehicles that there are, the more used to them they will get, eventually leading to better sighting. So that's a bit more of a positive aspect of biodiversity habituation.
And we are buzzing off trying to get to this guy. You can see him from right over there.
So the thing is, we won't be able to get too close to him, but we'll get as close as possible and then look at him through the binoculars. Obviously, living in the wild is quite a harsh, difficult lifestyle. It's not easy by any means. So in the wild, realistically, 55 to about 60 is the maximum age of an elephant in the wild. That's the maximum it'll live up to. But in captivity, with all the modern conveniences of modern veterinary medicine and all the care in the world, even though it's absolutely terrible and not condonable at all to have elephants in captivity, if you do have them in captivity and you do look after them, they can live up to 70 plus years of age.
Listen to what John just said and listen back to that, because this is a belief that I hold really close to myself. I mean, I've challenged those beliefs recently in Asia, traveling here in certain contexts, like in Thailand, where it's generally not feasible to actually bring elephants back into the wild. But in a place like Sri Lanka, you tell me for 1 second that it's more exciting for you to selfishly feed an elephant bananas or bathe it because that's what's convenient for you, or see an elephant like this. This is, to me at least, so much more special, so much more exciting. You have to go out and search for the elephant, and you have to find it yourself, and you're getting a mixed bag. You don't know what kind of elephant you're getting. You know, in this case, we're just getting an elephant who's eating. But this is so much more special, in my opinion. I don't know, I might be sounding a little preachy right now, but you know, to me, this is so much better than going to a sanctuary and feeding the elephant or bathing it or walking with it or riding it. This is so much more cool, getting to see it from a distance like this, getting to really appreciate what it's doing in the wild, living its own life in this incredible environment. It's unbelievable.
So one thing I will just add on to what Tal said. Look, in Southeast Asia, I understand that the way modern society has evolved and the way anthropogenic effects have affected those countries, it more or less means that it's very difficult to find suitable habitat, ecosystems, and space for elephants in the wild. In the Indian subcontinent and in Sri Lanka, it's completely different. Look, in Sri Lanka, about a third or just under a third of the land, regardless of the ecosystems, habitats, and vegetation types, regardless of whether they're degraded or old growth natural, is legally protected under the Protected Area Network. We have national parks, nature reserves, wildlife sanctuaries, conservation forests, forest reserves, environmental protection areas. You name it, we have the protected areas. So honestly speaking, if I was to advise anybody who's visiting Sri Lanka, if you want to see a Sri Lankan elephant, you need to go and see a wild Sri Lankan elephant. There are more than enough publicly accessible protected areas which you can go on official safari types to see elephants in the wild, and I would strongly recommend anybody who visits Sri Lanka to engage in such ecotourism activities, at least for the future of our biodiversity and for the future of our wild elephants.
I don't know, you're somebody who's for the first time seeing the Asian elephant, like during this trip, you know, like this is your first time sort of experiencing and seeing. I don't know, how do you feel compared to like what we did in Thailand?
I mean, it's different, right?
You can speak honestly, off the cuff.
It's conflicting, right? Because like you said, we challenged our views of what we saw in Thailand, and then you come out here and you're like, well, that's really how it's supposed to be, and that's cool because like you're searching. And once you find the satisfaction of actually seeing the elephant and like seeing what it's doing naturally is way different than with human interaction.
Than what we saw in Thailand.
It's a different experience, but I don't know. I agree completely with everything that has been said.
I think it's this adrenaline rush of not knowing. There was a chance that we come out today and we don't see an elephant. That's an equal chance of not seeing an elephant or seeing an elephant, even though there's, you know, every time I've been on safari in Sri Lanka, I've pretty much seen an elephant because there's just a lot of elephants here. But it's amazing to sow it out in its natural habitat and get to see it interacting with the wild the way it's supposed to, not, again, feeding it bananas or walking alongside of it and seeing a completely different animal that's behaving differently. Elephant or buffalo? Right in front of us.
Yeah, so that is a hybrid buffalo.
Hybrid buffalo.
Well, he stands
Big boy,
straight
yeah.
at us. He's a big boy.
I saw the body moving. I was like, wow, this is exciting. Something else is happening. I just want to add on one more point about the whole elephant thing. As a personal thing, this is the safest way. I feel the safest seeing an elephant. I don't want to see an elephant in front of me. I don't want to touch an elephant. I don't want to ride an elephant. I don't want to drive near an elephant. I want to be in a safari truck that's protected, and mostly the elephant doesn't want to do anything with us.
So let me also clarify something on that. So Sri Lanka, being Sri Lanka, there are 7 official safari types in Sri Lanka. Our friend is approaching this way.
It's so exciting.
So honestly, of all the official safari types in Sri Lanka, vehicular safaris are the safest to see elephants in the wild. Period.
And right as he's saying that, the elephant's approaching us right now. Here he comes.
Happy birthday. He's gonna cross most likely in front of us. Don't make noise. Observing us because he's curious to know what we are doing here, sitting so silently. But he's not displaying any threatening behavior just yet. It's funny, the cattle is this hybrid buffalo following his exact path.
got 3 over there, I can see. Are they wadding in the water? Waiting? Wow. 5 elephants here. We got 1,
Looks like a very loose gathering of bull elephants of different ages.
2, 3, 4, 5 elephants. Is there a reason why they gather this way?
So the thing is, I'm not sure when it comes to other subspecies of the Asian elephant or when it comes to the African elephant, but one thing we have noticed that at certain times of the year, especially when testosterone is slightly lower, bull elephants will form very loose coalitions and they will actually tolerate each other's presence, feed with each other, and generally speaking, live fairly harmoniously with each other. It's only when they enter a period of must during the breeding season that they cannot tolerate each other at all. And this is a pretty good example of that right here.
They're standing in water, right?
3 of them are standing in the water, the balance 2 are on land.
Because his face look old.
Good. Up. Up more. Tilt up. Up, 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 up. Okay. Now to the left. More to the left.
There's at least 2 or 3 individuals that could almost tick the box of true wild, with more true wild stock than domestic stock. Now, for example, the individual in the middle there, of these 3, is definitely one competitor. Then over here, in front of us, to the right of this small acacia bush, there's another individual. And then just behind, sitting down there, there's a third one.
The one sitting down?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's a big boy.
And of course, nobody can underappreciate the 2 bull elephants because they're literally That is the only species. So in Sri Lanka, we don't have wild rabbits, period, or any kind of rabbit. That is the only species of wild hare found in Sri Lanka, the black-naped hare, alternatively known as the Indian hare. Look at the back of its neck through the binoculars and you'll see why it's called the black-naped hare.
It looks like it's meditating.
He's just observing his habitat. Right there, observing this. Yeah. That's actually an extremely useful behavior because it means that so they're in this general area.
Dude, look at those horns. It's huge.
These definitely have the true wild gene far more present than the domestic.
Yep.
I don't see it.
Tell, keep an eye on your right.
Yep.
Right there. He's looking at us. He's looking at us. There he is. Sri Lankan sloth bear.
I see. Wow, look at that guy go.
Another big 5 ticked off the list now.
3, brother. We got it, man.
He
is creepy.
His
face is
creepy. He is creepy, man. He is a scary animal.
Sir, what are your pronouns?
Sir, your testicles are telling me that you might be agender.
Wildlife in honey okay.
This is the best sighting of a Sri Lankan leopard I've ever seen. This is amazing. If this doesn't convince you that safari is the way to do this, I don't know what will. This is the most exhilarating. We have seen 4 of the 5, big 5, and just 4 like the most beautiful sightings possible. What an amazing place! What an amazing day! There he is. Wow, he's coming this direction. Wow.
It's 2 sloth bears. 2 sloth bears in one extended afternoon safari.
He is the most creepy animal in the world. I am so off-put by this animal. Oh my god.
And yet it's the most undervalued of our terrestrial big 5.
Dude, look at that. Okay, I'm sorry, but he's got a massive cock. Did you see that shit swinging around, dude? He had an elephant dick.
Any idea why he's using the road like this instead of running the forest? Convenience?
Nothing more. He probably has a destination to get to, and what's more convenient than using an actual game trail, using a vehicular safari trail with no obstructions whatsoever.
He's gonna come back out.
He might come to the road. That's what we're holding. Oh, here we go, here we go.
Control yourself. It doesn't get any better than that. Dude, that does not get any better than today's sightings. That is phenomenal. What were you asking?
Oh, the age. So it's actually very difficult to determine the age of a slot bear, but that was a very healthy, relatively young male.
Relatively young, I would say. It looked a little smaller than
I love it when moments like that happen, and we're just alone here. We're just with the animals. So good. Oh man, so happy. This is a genuine happiness you can't replicate with other things. It's so cool. All right, so stopping here at one of the designated stopping points of the safari trail. I want to add, I always feel like it's such an adrenaline rush whenever you get a chance to actually get out of the vehicle in the park. Because again, it's like this adds an element of like anything could happen right now. You never know what animal is looking at us from the bushes. Probably nothing will happen, but you never know what can happen. And it just adds this element of adrenaline. We are climbing up this tower now to get a phenomenal view of Kumana National Park.
Also, don't worry because you're too short.
I didn't say it, you did.
This particular official designated stopping point has been given, or has been, what has been instructed is an official observation time. The reason for that is the time is Kumana Villu, and to give visitors to Kumana National Park an understanding of the extent of Kumana Villu and its biodiversity is one of the reasons why this observation tower exists. Majority of the other water bodies in Sri Lanka are man-made reservoirs, vavas, jalasayas, large vavas, or tanks, which are smaller reservoirs. Kumana Villu is an interesting one because although it's a villu, which implies natural lake, Kumana Villu actually had an anthropogenic start. So part of its history revolves around those coconut trees that you see in the distance over there. So
And a herd of water buffalo.
yes, those are more part of the natural environment, but there was an old village that existed for many, many generations in Kumana National Park, even back when it was still Yala East National Park. But during the Civil War, that village was completely abandoned, and there are only one or two structures left. Now, with Kumana National Park being the size it is, it's most likely that it will remain that way, and it should remain that way without destroying Kumana's ecological sanctity within its administrative boundaries. However, part of Kumana Villu owes its existence to those anthropogenic alterations. So it's a partly natural, partly anthropogenic created lake, natural lake, but it has since naturalized back into Kumana's ecosystems and habitats.
So this is an example of human-made intervention that's been taken back to nature fully.
Effectively.
Wow, incredible.
And that's why it goes as Kumana Villu, natural lake or natural sand rim depression. You do get plenty of actual natural lakes or natural sand rim depressions in Wilpattu National Park as an example. But this has a bit more of an anthropogenic history to it.
Those guys out there, those are also water buffalo?
No, those are elephants.
No, those are wild elephants out there.
So we're looking at some more elephants right there in the distance, right?
Yeah. Also, one more thing about Kumana Villu. During the breeding season, for many of the migratory birds, including the semi-aquatic ones, every major example of vegetation in Kumana Villu is filled with birds nesting. It's a sight to behold.
What about poaching? Is poaching a serious issue still in Sri Lanka for, let's say, elephants, leopards?
So yes, in terms of bushmeat, there are huge issues in terms of poaching in Sri Lanka. But remember that poaching the illegal acquisition of game meat through violent means is a serious issue that covers both biodiversity conservation and protected area management. So in terms of the biodiversity conservation sense, it's basically a violation and the slaughter of innocent biodiversity. And from a protected area management perspective, it's a violation of the protected area administrative boundaries and the legal and institutional frameworks in place. So it's quite a serious issue across multiple protected areas in the island.
And what you were saying earlier about how working in unison would help solve those problems, basically, that would be
But to do that,
means to an end.
But to do that, the legislative, regulatory, policy, statutory, scientific, and financial frameworks that exist for biodiversity conservation and protected area management would actually need to come together nicely in order to achieve that. Otherwise, we have very little chance going into the future.
And out we go again. Look how lush this place is. We're like deep in the jungle right now. What a beautiful road to get here. This is so cool. Thanks to this river. Wow.
If you gentlemen will follow me.
Oh, we're going right up to the water, eh? Okay. What is that? Frogs?
Yes, loads of amphibians. We have now reached the administrative and geographical boundary of Kumana National Park. On that side is a much more well-known national park, the second largest protected area in Sri Lanka, Yala National Park.
So this is what you were showing us on the map earlier, that river that cuts in between. So this is the boundary.
So this is the geographical and administrative boundary. This river is known as the Kumbukan Oya, or the Kumbukan River, and it is basically the boundary, the physical boundary that separates Kumana National Park, which is behind you, from Yala National Park in front of you. And this specifically, the administrative block of Yala National Park behind me, is Yala National Park Block 2. Now, please bear in mind, although there are vehicular safari trails further down that allow movement of vehicular safari traffic between Kumana National Park and Yala National Park, presently those vehicular safari trails are completely off limits, and you can only access them with a special permission request from the Department of Wildlife Conservation.
So hence it's illegal to
It's
cross
illegal.
between safaris, like different parks.
At the moment, yes.
Yeah. Is there much of a difference of what can be found in Yala for, like, let's say the average tourist who's coming here, they're gonna hear Yala. Yala is the place you need to go do safari.
So the thing is, it all depends on which block of Yala you go to, because each administrative block of Yala has different ecosystems and habitats. So Yala Block 1 is mostly semi-arid scrubland. Yala Block 2 is literally the nearest equivalent we have to Africa in Sri Lanka.
Wow.
There's no other place like that in Sri Lanka. And of course, Yala Blocks 3, 4 and 5 are very reminiscent of the inner parts of Kumana, as well as this riverine component as well.
And now, have we entered some sort of different ecological area?
So I was just about to get to that. That was the next point. So we are currently right now standing in a very unique type of natural forest known as dry zone riverine forest. Dry zone riverine forest is only found within a 500 meter to 800 meter periphery of any major or middle-sized river. So the reason why it's dry zone riverine forest is because we're currently in the southeastern dry zone, and dry zone riverine forest has its own unique ecological composition, very different from, example, the dry zone dry evergreen forests, which are the traditional typical old growth natural forest that you find in the interior of Kumana. So the biodiversity in dry zone riverine forest is actually sometimes more than other similar contiguous vegetation types and natural forests in the same national park. So in this case, Kumana.
And it's so, it's an immediate difference when we entered here from the sort of watering hole area that we were in earlier. Vibrant green, like really deep true. Is that because the river is basically
That's because
hydrating
of the
everything?
river, because it's hydrating everything, and because the species composition of the flora is actually very different here. So that combination of lushness, plus the fact that the Kumbukan Oya, which behind or right next to me, is pretty much filled with water throughout the year. Even during the lowest periods, there is some movement of water. So as a result, these forests maintain their own unique ecological balance and composition.
So amazing. You immediately see it when we entered here. It's like this vibrant, lush green. And muggers, crocodiles, going to be in here?
No, if anything, so one thing about the Kumbukan River, if you come with me. So obviously you can't see it from here because we're still a ways off, but if you were to follow the Kumbukan River right the way down, where my finger is pointing, you'd actually reach the coast.
Mm-hmm.
So this far down, there's a good chance that a saltwater crocodile might make its way inland up to about here. But the further up you go up the Kumbukan Oya, or the Kumbukan River, there may be muggers further up. But here there could very well be
Saltwater crocodiles.
Not to mention, and it has happened before on rare occasion in both Yala and Kumana because of the major rivers that cut through these protected areas, you might get the odd bull shark and the odd stingray as well.
Wow.
It has happened before.
Yeah, bull sharks do love swimming up rivers.
They're the only species of shark, to the best of my knowledge, that have the ability to expel the salt from their gills. It's a very specialized adaptation, and as a result, they're the only species that can swim several kilometers or more inland through water courses and waterways like these major rivers.
And then there's a bunch of frogs that keep hopping around. They keep hippeting and hopping. Okay, John, we've pretty much had the greatest safari possible.
Very glad to hear that.
In Kumana, we're missing one of the big five, but it just leaves more for me and Moshe to come back in the future.
Exactly.
Now I want to ask you, okay, here's a few questions, ethical questions about safari. So right now, both when we saw the leopard and the sloth bear, clearly, you know, there was a few of us, and we all sort of chased down the animals, you know, in their natural habitat. Maybe you can explain or expand upon the ethicality of doing a safari, especially with wild animals like that.
So the long story short of the ethical question, or shall we say the ethical conundrum, is that, look, at the end of the day, in certain protected areas where biodiversity are not fully habituated to the presence of people, remember, not every protected area that's publicly accessible has the habituation levels that Yala Block 1 and Udualaway have, for example. So in that instance, as long as you're not trying to intentionally hurt or intentionally scare or intentionally harass the example of biodiversity, it's not necessarily a bad thing to simply follow them. Now, obviously, we did see instances where certain safari vehicles were following them quite closely, and that, of course, can be regulated by simple administrative measures. But at the end of the day, look, if we're being honest from a biodiversity perspective, people aren't really going to be interested, the vast majority, unless it's either terrestrial big five or some sort of other megafauna. Biodiversity is great, but most people don't subscribe to seeing everything under the sun. So in that instance, it's not such a bad idea to follow, provided you do it as respectfully as possible.
Yeah, I think the reason I bring up this point is because, you know, maybe some people will watch the video and be like, oh, you guys are getting awfully close or chasing after the animal. But again, this is the best way to interact with wildlife, not just in Sri Lanka, but globally. We should not be putting these animals in cages, unless obviously we're helping them in some sort of capacity, but we should not be capturing these animals or trapping them. Seeing them is a privilege that not everybody can have in their lifetime. And it's a privileged thing to say that, but it's just a reality. And you have to pay up if you want to see these animals. That's just a reality. And it means coming into their natural habitat and seeing them as close as possible. Sometimes you won't see them, but that's the way to do it. Now, I want to further pose the question, what's the future of conservation of biodiversity in this country?
So, biodiversity conservation, the future really depends on a couple of things. There's something that I like to call the legislative, regulatory, policy, science circle, as it were. So, in effect, what that means is you take those thematics, you build proper, strong institutions, you engage local communities, you educate the general public, and by doing all of that, you can also have certain levels of private sector involvement. Obviously, that needs to be watched over as well, because unlike regulating the state, regulating the private sector is a whole other conversation. But we put all those elements together, and there is a future for biodiversity conservation and a future for Sri Lanka's fantastic protected area network. Because I will say one thing, just to add on to Tal's previous point as well. There are a lot of countries in the world that offer official safaris, whether vehicular, walking, hiking or other, that do far worse things to their biodiversity than what happens in Sri Lanka. And to be honest with you, even in Sri Lanka, the worst of it happens in the most crowded protected areas in the country. So in that light, I want to make it very clear, and I want to be very frank, that as long as you respect and understand biodiversity for what it is, ecotourism is truly one of the best ways to ensure and to understand and to appreciate and to contribute to the long-term actions of biodiversity conservation. In fact, now I know the term ecotourism itself has certain negative connotations.
Right, it's become sort of corrupted.
But let's put it this way. Let's call it nature-based tourism, right? Even nature-based tourism, whatever we brand it, that will help the future.
A mongoose?
Yes. That
Wow.
was a ruddy mongoose, one
There's
of
a
four
mongoose.
species of mongoose in Sri Lanka. Right there.
Right there.
Right there.
Wow, he's a big mongoose.
Right there.
Try to get a shot of him before he runs away. Still there, right?
No, he's
Oh,
gone.
there he is. There's a little mongoose. Actually, a big mongoose. There he is.
So yeah, going back to my point.
Just casual.
So going back to my point, aside from that fantastic ruddy mongoose sighting, nature-based tourism or ecotourism, however you want to brand it, will intrinsically and in a major way help biodiversity conservation efforts. And by doing that, and by giving more, especially in Sri Lanka, giving more accessibility and more education on the vast protected area network we have, by that means protected area management strategies will also become stronger, more efficient, and more institutionally coordinated. And all of that together will contribute to the safeguarding of our biodiversity into the future.
Again, if this video hasn't convinced you, I'm not sure what will, but beyond just coming to Sri Lanka and doing a safari, seek out the safaris that are less known. Like Kumana, like this isn't a place that I knew much about before John told me about it. And there's so many protected areas and safari parks across Sri Lanka that you can visit and have incredible safaris off the beaten track like this. And now the wind is getting too loud for me to speak. So we'll continue this video when we get off the truck.
No, he's gone.
Oh, there is. There's a little mongoose. Actually a big mongoose. There he is.
Yet another bull elephant. So that takes today's total count up to
Around 8 or 9.
11.
11?
11 bull elephants in one extended afternoon. Oh wow.
John, we found a tusker.
Excellent, excellent.
Oh my
It's
god.
a young tusker. It's a beautiful young tusker.
Wow, dude.
Dude.
This thing can't get better, dude. What in the world? I can't believe it. Poor guy, he's backing away slowly.
Who's using a flash? Idiots. Never use a flash for biodiversity photography.
Moshe, you literally have gotten so lucky today to see a tusker in Sri Lanka.